What is the most obvious sign a couple won't last long? Different argument styles. Shows contempt for spouse. Talk shit about each other to friends. Reminds me of this podcast, This American Life 261, The Sanctity of Marriage. In this intriguing podcast episode, Dr. John Gottman conducts experiments with couples, utilizing devices to monitor their responses during disagreements. From a brief video, they can predict the couple's future with an 85% certainty over the next 4 years. This figure rises to 94% if asked to discuss how they met. Gottman emphasizes that unhappy couples often lack shared positive emotions. While anger doesn't predict divorce, the escalation to contempt does. Surprisingly, all couples have irreconcilable differences in areas such as money, children, sex, and time. The key finding is that marital success isn't about finding someone to agree with on everything but understanding how to manage inevitable discrepancies. This insight is crucial for the lasting success of marriage, regardless of whom you choose to marry. Their communication just doesn't improve over time. Being in my first real healthy relationship, I've realized that both people need to be committed to their individual and collective growth to create a fulfilling, healthy relationship. If one or both people aren't trying and make a habit of withholding their true thoughts, with no effort to make small changes to eventually meet the other halfway, it's inevitable. When they act as if they don't like or respect you, and when you point that out, they say you're being too sensitive. I always find that couples who consistently post on social media about how much they love each other break up pretty quickly. I'm not talking about just one post, but the excessive ones. A recent example is a girl I know who posted probably every other day about how this guy is her world, she'd be lost without him, she misses him when he's not there, etc. They were together about 3 months in total. I just find it so obvious. I think these people just have a very specific idea about the relationship they want to have, so they dump all that shit on their next partner and just play the part until it all collapses. I knew a girl from college who would change her last name on Instagram to that of the guy she was dating almost every time she started a new relationship. I saw it change 3 times to last names that weren't hers before it stabilized. The Murder of Gabby Petito by Brian Laundrie springs to my mind when I read your comment. Their social media portrayed nothing but a lovey-dovey, happy van life, but when the camera was off, they were miserable and abusive. He ended up murdering her instead of just ending the relationship and later killed himself in a swamp after a manhunt. We had a very similar situation here in Vermont a few years ago. Another couple was attempting the social media lifestyle, but I don't think it gained traction. The 41-year-old husband shot and dismembered his 22-year-old wife, attempting to claim that she had left and was hitchhiking on the highway in rural Vermont. He acted like a local had taken her. Locals immediately called bullshit, and I did too. I live in this state, and if you go off the road in winter, people stop to help, making it one of the safest places to hitchhike, although I'm not advocating for hitchhiking.
They casually show signs that they don't respect each other. It can include a lot of eye-rolling, mocking, condescending laughter, casually saying, "You're so stupid," embarrassing each other in front of friends.
The Gottman Institute says the #1 emotion that predicts whether couples will split up is contempt. The situation of feeling embarrassed in front of friends hits home for me. My ex would bring up things she knew I was uncomfortable with and poke at them in front of people. I felt like I had no voice in saying, "Can you not? Because then it's holy shit. I can't believe you're so sensitive about that." Watch their conflict resolution process. The long-term conflict resolution process is also often ignored. It's not enough to resolve a fight in the moment. That can lead to growing levels of resentment over time, which is a very potent force that will eventually destroy a relationship. After a fight is resolved, there needs to be sincere mutual forgiveness. Bringing up old fights is very, very damaging. Once both people sincerely conclude the conflict and sincerely agree it's resolved, that's it. It's in the bin.
You hit the nail on the head with your last paragraph. Bringing up old fights after claiming to be past/over, it affects trust. We want to take people at their word, not feel like we have to second-guess interactions.
It's not enough to resolve a fight in the moment. Related, the fight ending is not the same as conflict resolution. Many couples can end a fight without ever resolving the underlying conflict, leading to resentment growing over time until it becomes unaddressable. This happened with me and my ex. We had a pretty big fight early on that was never resolved, and everything always ended up going back to that. We never worked it out, and we started fighting about trivial things at least once a week. I was absolutely miserable by the time I got out, and in retrospect, I should have ended it when I realized we'd never resolve it. Instead, I kept hoping it would just sort itself out for way too long. Yeah, I feel the long-term pains of an argument are very vital to work through. You can injure yourself but get patched up. The stress and physical trauma are still there and will take time to heal. But if you do things that nag that wound, it will hurt, take longer to heal, and might make it worse. Relationships are the same. You can never truly drop an issue immediately. If certain factors cause stressors, it's going to build to resentment. I have dated women who would apologize but go back to the same behaviors that bothered me, and it would just build up. It was especially hard when they wanted to drop the situation and reboot. I have seen it the opposite also. She would get upset, and I'd repeat an offense, and it just all would erode. Look at their face when they get a phone call from the other person. Tells you all you need to know.
My husband and I were climbing, and he bailed in the middle of an attempt to go answer his phone, which was stashed with our shoes and stuff. I thought it was odd because he's generally pretty good about ignoring calls when he decides to unplug for a bit. Whatever, maybe an important work call. He gets partway to the lockers and then stops, turns around, says, "I'm dumb, you're standing right here," and goes back to his problem. Found out on the way home, some other phone was apparently using my ringtone. I've been having a weird couple of months and freely admit to crying like an idiot when I realized he immediately stopped what he was doing to answer because he thought it was me.
And well, friends, that was all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, let me know with a thumbs up so that YouTube can share these stories with more people. Remember to hit the bell icon to be the first to know when we upload a new video. See you next time.